The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick, your host from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic. And today we have Severin Henderson on the line. Severin is a firefighter, and he also has his own business. Severin, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Can you tell our listeners about your background, what you've done, and what you're currently doing, and how you got there?
Sure. So, again, my name is Severin Henderson. I'm a firefighter for the city of Chicago. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but I've been in the Chicago area for going on 15 years now. So I took tests all around the country. I kind of knew what I wanted to do when I was growing up as a kid. I had a little girlfriend that used to tease me all the time, "You want to be a superhero?" And I'm like, yeah, I do kind of want to be a superhero. And so then I started looking in the direction of being a firefighter. I went to different programs where they taught you how to take tests and prepare, but I was not old enough to be eligible for the city of Cleveland's test when they gave it. So that's why I was taking tests all around the country.
I know in the background you've also had some law enforcement work. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So when I was still in Cleveland, I worked for a smaller department. It was a suburb of Cleveland called East Cleveland. And East Cleveland is probably the busiest small fire department you've never heard of. They are phenomenal. I still follow a lot of their social media pages and keep up with some of the guys, and they are always busy. So they were so busy to the point where they felt it was just arson all the time, and the city of East Cleveland sent me to police academy. In Ohio, in order to be an arson investigator, you have to have police powers as well. So I went to the police academy, I graduated and completed, and that's where I got my law enforcement background from, and I had one arrest. So if you want to hear the story about the arrest, I can tell you about it.
Please.
But in my entire police career, I have one arrest.
That's okay. I'd love to hear about it.
It was Father's Day. A guy and his mother wanted to see the kids. The baby mama said, "Nah, you can't see the kids." He said, "I want the kids to come outside." She said, "Nah, mama and son go make a Molotov cocktail," and said, "Y'all gonna come out one way or another," and threw the cocktail at the front of the house. So we responded to the fire, put the fire out, got some information from the young lady that was there, and it was the first of its kind for our unit. We called ourselves the FIU, Fire Investigation Unit, and the Fire Investigation Unit was activated. So we got a squad car from our police department. We had guns and belts and handcuffs, everything police have, vests, everything police have. We did an investigation to find out where these people were at. We laid down some calls. We did everything you would think and see on TV, but in a real police capacity. And we went up and we made an arrest. After the arrest, I don't know what happened to them, but we at least made the arrest for them starting the fire.
I am so disappointed. I thought you were going to tell me that you arrested the Donald Sutherland character from Backdraft.
That's going to take some older people to get that.
I know. I do these old movie references. Obviously, I'm teasing you, and this is what I talked about before, that I don't tell funny jokes, just tell jokes. But you got it.
I got it.
So you're in the city of Chicago, and
yes,
I was in a suburban public safety department, police and fire, and what I used to say is we earned our money one day a year, meaning the big incidents were few and far between, and usually it was a mutual aid to another town. Mm-hmm. But these guys jumped on the rigs, yahoo, screaming. I mean, it was like a cowboy movie whenever they got to play. And I was always taught you run out of the burning building, not into the burning building.
Right.
And that's for a civilian, obviously, and I'm teasing. So can you talk about some of the larger calls that you've been involved in the city of Chicago that you can talk about?
As you know, I like how you said that you can't talk about, because we can't put names and everything. Those are HIPAA violations.
Right.
But real quick, I want to say one more thing. You talked about backdraft, and currently I'm at the fire academy as an instructor. So sometimes we talk about backdraft just to kind of mess with the kids a little bit. And I call them kids because they like backdraft. What is that? So that's when I said you have to be old to know about the Donald Sutherland reference. They have no idea of what backdraft is. They do know about the show Chicago Fire, large scale incidents. So one of the biggest incidents that I had and I was a part of, we had the G20 NATO summit here. I can't remember exactly what year. I think it was 2013
or 14.
13 or 14.
Yep.
It was after President Obama was around. I remember that, and yeah, that sounds about right.
Yep.
So I was fortunate enough having that bit of law enforcement background. I was fortunate enough to be part of that event. We went out in the streets. We had these packs on that looked like Ghostbusters. It was just crazy, and people were throwing bottles at people with urine in them. And so we would go and we would spray them down, clean them up. It was like a little hazmat incident. But the thing that was so interesting, I was standing on a corner of Michigan and Cermak. And it's in the South Loop of the city. It's a pretty busy corner. But this day, they just had the protests going down the street, and there were so many people. It looked like a parade for a championship. It was so many people. People were messing up cars, throwing stuff. People were in the windows from the top of the high rises, throwing stuff down. It was just civil unrest at its finest. And the march just went down the street. We stood in a single position. And after it was done, the street cleaners came, swept everything up, and it looked like nothing had ever happened. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. So that was one of the larger incidents. And one more, we had the riots a couple years back in Chicago. And that was interesting, too. They had the bridges straight up in the air. Yep. The police horses were out. We had people trying to make a hydrant, that's get water from the hydrant into the engine. They were throwing M80 firecrackers at us. It looked like the last scene in the last Batman by Christopher Nolan, when everybody was just out fighting on the street. And that was probably the busiest day of my career. We went to about 10 working fires, 40 runs total. And this is when I was in the academy again. And for us to do that from the academy rigs as opposed to being on the actual company, it was just, we would go anywhere there was fire. It was fun, scary, and exhilarating all at the same time.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the G20 summit. I was working for a police department at that time, and we had all the riot gear. And the town I was working was adjacent to the city. There was nothing there. I mean, there might have been 4 or 5 people with the sign.
Yeah.
It was. I'll call it lame in terms of comparing to what you just described. And I do remember the filling bottles with urine, and I happen to know the former retired CPD superintendent that was in charge of the response. Mm-hmm. And I know that he had directed these marchers in circles.
Okay.
So they wouldn't get to the actual conference. And a lot of the people, I'm serious, they had actors and they led them down streets, and they were just going in circles, obviously not knowing the city of Chicago, which tells me there were a lot of people that came in from the outside. And people say, oh, they're paid, bro. Who knows if they're paid or not? Who cares? They were there. There's potential for violence. Doesn't matter what their origins are. So I really appreciate your service to the community, to the city of Chicago. And where I said we earned our pay one day a year, you earn your pay one day a minute. Because it's busy. I mean, it's fantastically busy. How do you sleep at night? I don't mean that like morally. I mean, how do you stay up 24 hours, especially if someone's on an ambulance or a medical rig, and go from call to call to call? Isn't there like exhaustion that sets in?
When I was younger, it was a whole lot easier. The older I got, the less easy it became, getting up and going on all those runs. I was also on rig on the west side of the city, Truck 29, and we would battle with another truck company from the south side for the busiest trucks in the city. So we would do about 5,000-6,000 runs a year. And it just got to the point where I would only sleep when I was off. And so we worked a 1 day on, 2 day off system. And so that next day would just be gone. That whole next day would be rest. And then the day after that would be getting chores done, running errands, things like that, and then back to do it again. So it's just it's like a military mindset where they say embrace the suck. It's kind of like you're in the suck with your other brothers and sisters. And as long as somebody's there with you and we all sucking this up together, it's not as bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So earlier you mentioned Chicago Fire. And yes. I want to touch on that. And I also want to touch on some definitions to educate the listeners. Up until recently, when my kids are teenagers, so now they're like going in a million different directions and we're never home at the same time. But when they were younger, we had a tradition. We would watch Chicago PD and Chicago Fire. And, being a firearms instructor, my kids would say, Daddy, he's holding the gun wrong. Daddy, his fingers on the trigger, stuff like that, which was really cool. I was proud. My kids walk around with their Nerf guns and their fingers straight because they're not shooting. So that's a proud moment for me. But right. when we watch Chicago Fire, I happen to know this because I've been in these environments, that you're in a building in a fire and you can see the other firefighter. Can you see the other firefighter when you're in a fully involved structure fire?
So that's the thing about this show. I have a love, I'm not going to say love-hate, love relationship with that show because I love that it gives us publicity and it puts us in a positive light. It doesn't make us look too terrible. Well, some shows do. And it kind of alerts people to what we do to an extent, which is awesome, for your job. You want people to have an idea of what you do if they can't fully experience it. So they go in and they have these special masks on the show, masks that we don't even use because not only can they see each other, they can see their faces. So, right. And a real fire, no, you can't see anything. And you are not walking around because if you are walking around, you have the likelihood to fall through a hole in the floor, trip over something. So we're always crawling. We're down on our hands, we're down on our knees, or we're doing what's called a duck walk. But you can't see anything. You can hear if you can hear good, and it's still kind of muffled, even though we have microphones on our SCBAs. You can, tell the tone of someone's voice, and you're trying not to scream. You're trying to just talk regularly because the more you scream, the worse it is to hear. But you're excited, your adrenaline's rushing, everything's going at the same time. To answer your question, make a long story long, no, we can't see.
You mentioned SCBA. I just want everyone to know. Everyone knows what scuba is. If you take the U out, it's self-contained breathing apparatus, and these are the air tanks that the firefighters wear when they go into a building. A lot of them are rated at 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but I'm going to pose this as a question. Do they ever last 30 or 45 minutes?
No, that's kind of like the lawyer question where you already know the answer.
Right. That's exactly
they're rated for 30, 45 hour. But if you know what? I take that back. If you're in great shape, like most of our candidates are by the time they exit the academy, they do last for that long. We have a consumption test to show them that when the bell goes off, you still got time to get out and you still got time to do things. And we time them to see how long they last on the bottles. So they sometimes make it just past that 30-minute mark. But for the most part, if you're in there working and you're the average American, it's probably 15 minutes at the most.
Right. And part of that is the adrenaline dump. We're breathing heavier. We're working. The 30 minutes is kind of an at-rest measurement. So that's why I bring it up and I pose it as a question to educate everyone. Also, the general public really does not know the difference between quint, engine, truck, squad, the brush truck, it goes on and on. So I wanted to go over all of these because when the fire apparatus drives by, ooh, a fire truck, and it might not be an actual truck. So I wanted to go through
Right.
some of the definitions with you that for you it's secondhand. So what is an engine?
Can I make one quick point?
Yes, please, please.
Um, just a quick offer I have. I have a book that speaks about. Well, I wrote two books. Well, I wrote more than two books, but the two books that I'm proudest of is one is called "Hey New Guy: The Candidate's Guide to a Long, Strong, and Healthy Career," and the other book that speaks specifically to your question is called "Zoe is Going to Be a Fire Engine." And Zoe is my daughter. On my Instagram page, if anyone would like to check it out, my Instagram name is at I am Sevy, just IAMSEVY, and I have it pinned to the top of the page. She said she was going to be a fire engine when she grew up, not a firefighter, not a fire person. She said, I'm going to be a fire engine. So I thought that was hilarious when she said it. And an engine is what pumps the water. That's what takes the water from the hydrants or a lake. We got the biggest hydrant in the country right at our border, Lake Michigan, and it turns it to pumpable pressure so that we can put out fires, especially in high-rise buildings.
All right, so you said high rise. What's a truck and an aerial and a quint? That category.
So a truck is what it sounds like is what people call an engine, but it's a truck that has a ladder attached to the top. Our ladders go 100 feet. They used to go a little bit higher, but we don't necessarily use them to go to the top of high-rise buildings. We walk upstairs in those situations and bring people down. We have people shelter in place as necessary. But a truck company is responsible for doing the majority of the search and rescue on an incident. The engine goes in, they find the fire, they put out the fire, they protect the exits. The truck company goes in, does search and rescue, and opens up any areas where fire could be hiding.
Do they also do ventilation?
Yes, they also do ventilation. That's a big conversation in the fire service now with flow path and everything, when we're going to open up, when we're going to do coordinated attacks and things like that. But they do open up, especially from the top. Like if we're fighting a fire in a regular house, bungalows were the majority of the city, and we go to the roof and we cut a hole in the roof and we let all those hot heat and gases come out. That's what we do on the truck company. A quint is kind of a mix between an engine and a truck. It usually has a smaller pump on it, around 200 gallons, maybe 300 gallons, just enough water to get you going before somebody else can come help out. But it also has a smaller aerial on it. Usually they're about 75 feet. So it's a truck, it's an apparatus rather, that can do both, and its functions is doing both. We also have in the city, the company I'm assigned to is a squad company, and we do everything, but our major job is to help the firefighters. We have special skills, specially trained skills. We rescue if you high, if you're down low, I just saw a video, I think in Louisville, where a semi-truck went over a bridge and it was dangling. So if you can imagine the tractor portion of the truck still being on the bridge and the cab hanging, the fire, they took a ladder company, stretched the ladder out, raised the line, firefighter came down from rope, grabbed the person, rescued them, and brought them back up. That's what we would do on a squad company. And then we have a hazmat company. They go out, they do all the hazmat incidents. If there's a nasty spill or something that somebody doesn't know what it is, they come. They don't clean it up, but they mitigate the situation so that a real cleanup company can come in and do that. And then last but not least, two other things, but our last one on the fire side is the air sea rescue. So in the city of Chicago, we have a couple of helicopters and a few boats. In the summertime, we have more boats that we put on the water that go through the lake and they go through the rivers of the city, and the helicopter comes. And the helicopter not only helps on air sea rescue for water incidents, but if we have a high rise that is close to the water, which is where most of ours are, they can come and check out the building, see if there's anything that we need to see that we can't see from the ground.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about that. One of my questions on the air sea rescue is if there is a boat several miles out in Lake Michigan, would
Hmm.
Chicago Fire respond to it? Or how far out do they respond to?
As far as somebody can see.
Okay.
If somebody can see far enough to call, we respond to
So
it.
the horizon,
Um,
basically.
yes.
Okay.
We also work with the Coast Guard and the Parks and Rec Department. So it's kind of a joint effort. We don't have ultimate control over the water, but we're there to assist. And again, we have that helicopter that can get out there. They have special cameras where they can see heat signatures and tell if people are there in the water, on the boat, things like that.
So does the air sea rescue also do scuba diving
Yes.
underwater? Okay.
Yes.
Very
So
good.
that on the squad company, we're trained to do that as well. We respond to the same water. I was on squad one. Squad one is responsible for the majority of the lakefront, but not all of it. We stop at a certain point, and another squad carries on the rest. But we still go to assist. And there's another squad that's responsible more for the river. But if it has to do with water, we go and we dive, and we do a lot of practice for diving as well too. We do a lot of swimming, a lot of dive practice, ice diving. I remember I put on the wrong suit one time I put on the right suit with the wrong gloves,
Ah,
and it leaked. And my hands were so cold, I thought I was going to lose them, but
right.
I just had to come up.
Very good. And I don't think the public knows this, but if you're on a squad company, it's pretty elite. You are one of the best. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I am not a person. I'm not very good at tooting my own horn. So that's what people say. And yes, it does take extra training. We have to do a lot more than the average person that just wants to be in there. So yes, you have to be elite to an extent to be on the squad company.
Very good. Does Chicago still have snorkels?
Yes, that's where the snorkels work. So we're the only squad company in the country that I know of. We run with two apparatus that counts as one squad. We have 6 people on that apparatus. Our regular manning is 5, but on those we have 4 people in the front, what's called the box, and 2 people ride behind the box and what's called the snorkel. Snorkel is 55 feet. It's an articulated boom. It's like a cherry picker. That's where one of the commissioners, Quinn, got the idea from. He created the use of the snorkels, and he got it from light changes, from how they change the street lights. And so we take that up 55 feet, and we usually use it on defensive operations.
Okay, so I'm going to explain what defensive means. Offensive means that the firefighters have gone into the building, are doing search and rescue, and are fighting the fire from the inside. Defensive operations means they've confirmed or it's too risky to go in, or they've confirmed that everyone's out, and they spray water. They put the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's old school.
Yep,
From the outside, because we want to risk a lot to save a lot, but only risk a little to save a little. That's the mantra.
that is.
So this is quite stimulating, quite interesting to me. I want to kind of segue. Every firefighter has a side business, and I kind of say that facetiously. So your side business is Department 3C. Can you talk about what Department 3C is?
So Department 3C is a company that I came up with, kind of what you were speaking about, that being tired. I was getting to a point of almost burnout, just going on runs, run, and I didn't really have an outlet. So I created Department 3C as an outlet to emphasize and promote having hobbies or having something else to do besides immersing yourself fully in the fire all the time. Of course, we always want to be good at our job, at our career, anything we do and anything we pick up, but sometimes you got to decompress. So with Department 3C, that was my initial goal, to just promote kind of taking care of yourself. I have a real strong emphasis on mental health and mental health through hobbies. And my hobby became writing. So, like I said, I wrote that book. Hey New Guy, I wrote that book for my daughter's always going to be a fire engine. I write articles, I write blogs, I write everything. So with Department 3C, I hope to, and I try to encourage not only firefighters, but anybody in a first responder orbit, like family members, anybody else, to outlet and, kind of lean into your creativity. Another thing I like to do is speak and talk, coach, mentor. I'm just a busy little bee, but I wasn't able to become that busy little bee and realize how much I had to offer until I created something that showed I have much more to offer than just being a firefighter. Not saying that just being a firefighter is the worst thing. I don't want to make that seem like it's the case, but we all have what I feel is more to offer life other than careers and work. And even though I love my career and I love my work, I still have other hopes, dreams, and endeavors. And that's what Department 3C represents.
And do you have clients who pay you to write for them?
That's what I am working on. I have done a couple of freelance jobs. I've developed a couple of courses in the fire vein for people, but right now I am looking to do something consistently, but right now between the academy and my family life at home, it hasn't allowed me to pick up something consistent. So freelance wise, yes, I have. Consistently, no, I have not.
So if someone wanted to talk to you about freelance work, what is your website? How can they get a hold of you?
My website is, you can find me at www.department3C.com. That shows all of the offers that we have on board. It talks about the books, courses, and I even developed and built a course around writing books and how to either self-publish or publish the book on your own. I had a podcast that I'm looking to get back up and running sometime in the near future. And speaking opportunities, coaching opportunities, just a plethora of information, and a lot of writing by me, a lot of articles that I've written and published so that you can see what I have to write and talk about.
Stay tuned, because when we return, we'll be continuing the conversation with Severin Henderson and starting a new conversation with Chris Henning, who is running for office in the 59th Representative District.
The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.